So I want to talk to you today about 3 deadly mistakes that I made when I was building my first HVAC company and how I somehow survived those. You know, I got in this industry in 2003, worked for about a year as a comfort advisor, and then was hired by another company to be their sales manager. And I'll never forget, I was at a home show and I was working for company A, and the owner of company B comes over to me during the home show and starts chatting me up, and at some point starts talking about, hey, maybe come over to work with us and help us build a sales team, because the company I was working for, we were killing it, you know. So I ended up having some meetings with company B owner, and after a couple of meetings, he tells me, he says, I got to tell you, he's a very, very devoutly religious man, and says, I thought about it, and God told me that I should hire you. I'm like, right on, God, you know, this is going to be great. So I take the gig. I go to work there for about 3 months, recruit 3 or 4, 5 comfort advisors, build their sales system, train them on the system that I had developed, and in my first year of selling for another company, and got the whole thing put together. Well, 3 months in, the owner calls a meeting with all the comfort advisors. I'm unaware of this. I didn't know what was going on. And he said, how's it going, you know, with Weldon and his sales program? And, oh, it's going good. We got it mastered. He's like, you guys feel like you kind of know it now? And, yeah, we know it. We're good. And then he calls me in and fires me. And he tells me in the firing process, he's like, I got to tell you, I prayed on it some more and God told me to fire you. I'm like, dude, God doesn't, like 3 months is a blink of an eye, you know, for the big guy. And, but at that very moment when he told me that, I realized that I was going to open my own company. Now, that was a bit of a challenge. I had a year's experience in the business. I didn't really know what I was doing next, but I set out and I built my own company, started it from scratch. And I want to talk to you today about 3 things that I did that were lethal mistakes, and it's a miracle I survived them. But I think if you understand these things, hopefully you can avoid them. So let's talk about these 3 deadly mistakes. When I started my company initially, I started it in the living room of my house and didn't really know where to start. So I took out an ad in our local newspaper, a full-page Sunday ad. It was $5,000 that I put on a credit card. And the ad said, furnace and air conditioning blowout sale, you know, lowest prices ever. Well, we weren't in business the day before, so they were definitely our lowest prices ever. And across the bottom of the ad, it said, operator standing by 24/7. Well, the operator standing by was me and my cell phone. But on that Sunday, I set 16 sales leads for the following week. And I knew we were off. So I went out and I started selling these systems. That Monday after the ad ran, by the way, one of the first calls I got was from the building department. And they're like, we have no record of you having a license. I'm like, I didn't know you needed a license. I had worked for a year for another guy as a comfort advisor. I just thought, you know, put him in. But no, you got to have a license apparently. So I went down to the building department and was very honest and transparent with them and told them, hey, I'm not going to do anything without a license. And they actually hooked me up with a guy who just got out of jail who had a license who could do my installs. So initially we just had in-pull permits and I outsourced the installs to him. So this went on for a couple of months, and eventually we rented a little building. And so I get this building, and right away at this point now I've got territory managers. You know, we still don't have a license because we're using this other guy's license. But you know, we're poking around for suppliers and different things. And one of the suppliers came in, and this was deadly mistake number 1, being the knucklehead that I was, not knowing what the heck I was doing, convinced me to buy $100,000 of inventory. And by the way, this was in 2004. So, you know, 100 grand is a lot of money. A lot of money now, but definitely was 20 years ago. And convinced me I needed to have all this inventory on hand so I could do installs real quick. Well, that worked out really good the first week because we used the most popular items out of that $100,000 inventory. And from that point on, had to go buy equipment because the stuff we needed was never the stuff that we had. And I ended up having about $70,000 of inventory on my hands that I could not move. I eventually went back and got them to buy it back and got on a consignment program, which I highly recommend, where the equipment is there as you need it, but your supplier comes in every week, every month, whatever, takes an inventory and invoices you for whatever that you have. But I was very fortunate to survive that because we tied up so much capital and all that inventory, and it was never the right inventory. That was a huge mistake that we made. I would say the second deadly mistake that I made was not understanding the inherent animosity between your sales team and your install team, right? In my mind, everybody loves sales, right? Because nothing happens till something gets sold. The money coming in from sales is the thing that pays payroll, and it buys the building, it buys the marketing, it does all this stuff. And so I just figured everybody understood that. Well, what I didn't know is that installers basically despise comfort advisors. Installers accuse salespeople of having a rubber, ruler, right? We can't even measure stuff, and we'll promise 10 pounds of feces in a 5-pound bag, overpromise to homeowners, that kind of stuff. And that does happen. Sometimes we sales guys get a little overly enthusiastic and promise things that really, really can't be done. But after a while, in about a year or so, I began to really see the damage to our culture, the divisiveness, the animosity between the salespeople and the install people. The install people thought that salespeople were just stupid, didn't know what they were doing, didn't care about anything, just looking for their commission. The salespeople thought the installers were just whining, complaining, and they should just understand how important selling is. But they don't see it. They didn't see it eye to eye. And so about a year into this thing, we started having a lot of animosity between sales and install, to the point where my install department would sometimes sabotage jobs, right? They were cutting their nose off to spite their face. It didn't seem to bother them that they were hurting the company. But such things would happen as a salesman would sell somebody a system for a Saturday install. And magically, the install department would call back to the salesman and say, that equipment's not available, we can't do it Saturday. And this happened a couple of times, and my sales guys were, yiping at me like, what's going on here? And I just couldn't believe they would intentionally undermine what the heck was going on. Why would they do this intentionally? It's their job too. So it happened one day, finally on a Friday afternoon. One of my sales guys called and said, listen, I've got this deal sold. It's a no heat situation. We're in Colorado. It was wintertime. And we have to find this equipment. And they're saying, the install department is saying the equipment's not available. So the first person I get upset with is my supplier, because we spend a lot of money with them. And their promise to us was they would always have the equipment we needed. So I call the supplier. I'm like, I said, I got to have this furnace, and I don't care if you got to drive to Kansas City and get it tonight. I need it here by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. And he says, well, I'm not sure what you're talking about. We have probably 15 of those here in inventory. And I'm like, oh my God. The install department was telling the sales department they didn't have the equipment because they didn't want to mess with the install on a Saturday. And we routinely did installs on Saturdays. Part of the deal. We paid extra for it, sure. But sometimes it's got to be done. And that's when I realized how bad the culture was and how bad the division was between those two departments. And it had the potential to destroy our company. So what I started to do after that to kind of, recover from that mistake is I decided to put my service guys, installers and service techs too, but installers primarily, and my sales guys in the same room for breakfast every single month. And my thinking on that was, once they get to know each other, it's hard to hate somebody you really know. It's hard to hate somebody you're laughing with and having breakfast with. And I just thought if I put them together, they would learn that everybody cares. Everybody's doing the best they can. The sales guys are not intentionally trying to make difficult installs. The install guys aren't whining, complaining. They just need better information up front to do their job properly. And I just thought if everybody got on the same page, we might be okay. And you know what? That's exactly what happened. We started putting them in a room for breakfast once a month. And of course, we wouldn't let the sales guys isolate themselves. We mixed them up, and sales guys had to sit with installers and vice versa. And it took a while, but after a few months, each department started realizing, wow, the install guys are pretty cool. They're pretty smart. It's a good thing I have such great installers that can, because we don't get paid until the stuff gets installed. They don't get commission until it gets installed. And little by little by little, we got everybody on the same page. And that was a game changer. Listen, my dear friend Gary Alex will always tell you that culture will trump your strategy every single time. You can have the best strategy in the world. But man, if you got a bad culture, if you got people working against each other, right, from within, it's just not going to work, right? That house divided cannot stand. It's that simple. And so it's really important to make sure that you get the good culture, that you get those teams working together, put them in a room together once a month for breakfast. And I think eventually they all come to realize that, hey, everybody's trying real hard here. Everybody's doing the very best they can. So The first mistake was spending $100,000 on inventory, boneheaded move. The second one was not realizing until a year into the deal that there was this natural conflict between install and sales. And the third one I think is a really, really common mistake, even for companies that have been around for a long time. And that is that all they need are just more leads. Listen, I've been teaching, consulting, and speaking in this industry for 20 years. And it's super common. When I meet a client, a potential client for the first time, the first thing they always say to me is, we just need more leads. We just need more leads. And I'm always like, well, let's just slow our roll here. Let's take a look at what we're doing on our current leads. Because if you're not making money on $1 million in revenue, you're not going to make money on $5 million in revenue. And here's why. If your strategy is strictly to grow your company by acquiring new customers, AKA marketing, that's what marketing is, you can go out and you can acquire new customers. There's two ways to build a business, and only two ways. It's been that way since the dawn of mankind, since we were trading camels at the pyramids, right? You can go out and spend money to attract new customers, right? Which means you go spend money on marketing, and let's say I have X amount of customers, and I spend some marketing, and 6 months later I have twice as many customers. Well, I'm still not making any money because the problem is my margins and my gross margin. And now I've had to hire more people. I've had to buy more trucks. I probably had to expand my call center, maybe buy a bigger building, rent a bigger building, whatever. And what happens when you do that, if you're not making money on what you have, you just end up having a lot more revenue you're not making money on because you're spending it to grow as fast as it's coming in. So when anybody asks me or tells me that we just need more leads, I always look at the productivity of what they're currently doing. And I look at revenue per lead, obviously top line revenue, revenue per lead, gross profit, and net profit, EBITDA. And so the second way to build a business, the first way is to spend a bunch of money attracting new customers. The second way is to simply sell better and sell more to the existing customers you have. In other words, if I go out this year and I sell 1,000 customers it's $2 million of revenue, and I can go out next year and sell the same 1,000 customers and make it $2 million on revenue or $3 million, in other words, solve more problems for my homeowners, then I don't have to increase my overhead. I might have some additional cost of goods because I sold more systems. But you got to get better at selling. You got to get better at making sure that your gross margins are adequate to cover your overhead plus some profit. Profit's a 5-letter word, not 4-letter. And so I made the mistake of going out and spending a ton of money on marketing. We were on radio. We were on television. We were on billboards. We were everywhere because I thought that's what the big guys did. What I didn't realize is the big guys figured out how to make money first and then start expanding. And I got wise pretty quick after about a year of this. I'm like, what we have to do is we got to get better at capitalizing on the opportunities we have because I don't need to spend a ton of marketing to do that. I've already got these customers. I just got to solve more problems. In this business, you get compensated based on the number of problems you solve for a homeowner. So let's get better at selling. Let's get better on our service calls at selling accessories and preventative repairs, that type of thing. And that's what we did. And that's when we finally got profitable after a couple of years because I figured those things out. Now, once you get profitable, you're making money, and now's the time to grow. Now go spend the money in marketing. But if you're losing money at $1 million, don't make the mistake that you're going to go out and spend a ton of money and start making money on the next set of customers. Because that next set of customers is going to require more overhead, more trucks, more people, more administrative staff, bigger building, everything goes up with it. If you're not making money at $1 million, you're probably not going to make money at $5 million, right? Because profitability is an art. It's about charging enough and, of course, controlling expenses that will help you make a profit. Once you're making a healthy profit, once you got the business humming along, now go spend the money. And by the way, you'll have the money to spend. One of the cardinal rules of my friend Gary Alex is that you never borrow money for marketing. And I agree with that 100%. Don't ever borrow money for marketing. That is a fool's errand because if it doesn't work and you owe that money, you will sink under the weight of that debt. But if you get good at selling first, you get good at selling at proper margins, you get your service tickets up, right? Get them where they need to be. Now go out and spend the money on marketing. A, you'll have the money, and B, now you know what the hell to do with it. So those are my 3 deadly mistakes that very almost crushed us. Somehow, just through dumb luck, I guess, we survived it. Spending way too much money on marketing, inventory out of the wazoo instead of doing consignment, and then, of course, not understand the cultural conflicts between install and in sales. You get those resolved, and you're well on your way to building a great company. Build the right culture, consign your equipment. Most suppliers will do it. And by all means, get good at what you're currently doing before you start going and dumping a ton of money into marketing. Because if you're not making money now, you're probably not going to make money then. There are things you have to put in place to make money, and they're going to work whether you're at $1 million or whether you're $5 million. Get those done first, then start growing.